Hey, Laura J here, speaking with my friend Jared Wade before we host the Mystic Music Summit tomorrow. So, Jared, say hello to the world.
Hello.
We are very much looking forward to coming to you, and I am about to actually read him the email that I'll be sending out to my people today, January 11th, which is actually day 12 of the 33 Days to Transform Your Self-Image series that is towards dreaming a new dream together. And so here we go. Dear you, dear Jared, the divine plan works on its own schedule. It doesn't question whether we're too far gone to be redirected back toward our destiny if we veer off track once in a while. It just trusts our autopilot subconscious to redirect us back onto the best existing path until we decide to blaze one for ourselves, remembering that none of us came here to walk a trail that already exists. It will challenge you to ponder whether you really can make as great an impact as you feel in your heart you may be able to do. And I'm here to remind you that you wouldn't have the desire in you if you didn't have the ability to self-actualize with it. It's like when a missile is on assignment. It's off course 99% of the time, and yet most hit their target because they're constantly being redirected back toward their focus point, and that's what we're being called to do right now, too. We're being called to become laser focused on the newly ordered world that we now have a chance to bring into existence together. It's about learning to create a center of inner peace that we can access any time that can starve the negative entities and thought forms that feed off of our fear and anger, of which there is far more vampirism than stereotypical portrayals of Dracula and the Addams family would have us think. We grew up not realizing energetic vampirism is live and well within the social network we live in here on planet Earth already. Now we must decide to redefine our own self-image so that we can change the cue, response, reward routine that drives us and create habitual action patterns that will help us develop our life by design or by default. Remembering that whatever frequency we vibrate at, will attract more of the same vibration to us because we are either programmed from the outside in or the inside out, and we get to choose. I challenge us both to begin reprogramming ourselves from the inside out so that we can truly be the change we seek in this world by walking our talk and talking a good game that honors and respects others and ourselves in the quest for self-actualization that we have all come here to experience through self-mastery if we're honest with ourselves. It's about learning to find home within ourselves so that we can send ourselves to our happy place when the most traumatic or boring things are happening. But we need to leave our body so as to not be present for the sacrilege of our temple. But now I suggest we learn how to actually enter ourselves deeper so that we can trace back the emotional triggers to the root cause within our present present life or the lineage that we come from and came here to clean up for the family. Maxwell Maltz wrote of an equivalent internal sense of home when he spoke of the inner rabbit hole in a must-read book or audio to listen to called Psycho-Cybernetics that I would highly recommend for how it sheds light on how we come up with our self-image identity in the first place and why we're being called to address the unhealthy patterns now. We often use the past to judge, label, and condemn ourselves within the courtroom of our saboteur's quarters, and yet we often want to pretend this part of us doesn't exist. We forget that everything has a shadow and sacred side up to them, and that it is up to us to choose which wolf we will feed. If you know the parable of the Cherokee grandfather who told his grandson there was a fight happening within them between a good wolf and an evil one. When asked which wolf would win, the grandfather reminded him the answer would depend on which wolf they chose to feed their energetic resources, time, energy, effort, attention, and money, too. A tribunal is often held to determine the tribe's comfort level with new information and the one sharing it. So we are going through challenging times for messengers of hope and peace who come to say, even though it hasn't happened before, it can, and we must help bring heaven into earth. The way they say is possible during the golden age. We are currently living in. And even though the messenger only received the inconvenient information and followed the call to share it with the necessary players of the game, who could effect change, we are often the ones used as a scapegoat for things unrelated to us or our abilities, but messengers are often blamed nonetheless. If the message is not one people want to hear, the messenger is blamed as the reason for their discomfort, while the true criminal continues living in the shadows. Whoops. We fell over.
It's good.
We're being called to change our relationship with ourselves, and in the process, shift the universe on its axis at a time when we are all aware that everything is changing anyway. So why not intentionally become part of the tipping point in collective consciousness? We have to remember the story of the monkeys on an island being studied who were given sweet potatoes on the beach. One day, one of the sweet potatoes rolled into the water, and the monkey who ran to grab it rubbed it off and then bit into its first non-sandy sweet potato of its life. So naturally, it shared its discovery with its monkey buddies, who shared it with theirs, and eventually, when it reached the 100th monkey, all monkeys everywhere knew to wash the sweet potato because the idea landed in the collective subconscious and became widely accessible knowledge. 100 may not be the number required to truly reach a tipping point in collective consciousness, but it reflects the fact that reaching it will take effort, but not necessarily as much as we might think. Collective shifts take place when a certain amount of the population become aware of something that seems an unspoken truth that may be common knowledge, but is not necessarily common practice. We are holographic images of the grand overall designer who have access to the grand overall database that contains all that is and ever has been, existing simultaneously without time and space to limit its fullest expansion, and yet we must be responsible stewards of this responsibility too. An insightful documentary called The Need to Grow makes it clear that unless we change current farming practices, we only have approximately 60 years left of sustainable farmland, and then what? What will we tell our future generations who cannot farm the nutrient-depleted lands they will inherit from us unless we take responsibility for our impact on the world we live on now? And while we're at it, wake up to the globalistic takeover underway by conglomerate technocrat eugenicists out for themselves and willing to take freely from those who are willing to give blindly. It's time to realize that the seeds we plant in the earth are equally important to the ones we plant in the minds, and that we're already planted in the hearts, in our hearts, long before we got here, like the oak tree that awaits its fullest expansion in the seed until it is given the right circumstances to grow and prosper. It's just time to start respecting the law of timing and to know that you and the divine will often have very different timelines and expectations, and yet everything is happening for us, not to us, to ensure we are able to become the greatest expression of ourselves possible. For it is during times of crisis that the true ones reveal themselves, and that is what I aspire to be. I aspire to be true to myself and others as a result of the integrity I restore through right action. It was taken away from me. Wow. It was taken away. It didn't save? No.
No, that's not good.
Jared.
You were like on such a roll. It was getting so good, like building, and then all of a sudden. Oh my gosh.
Well, I'm glad I have this because evidently that's all I have of that message. So you will not necessarily get the message via the text I had written plus so much more, and yet sometimes less is more. So maybe that was just enough. So thank you for listening to that rendition of what is no longer written. Wow.
You did. Wow, yeah.
So the first part of that cut out. Fortunately, I had the original in the transcribe piece. So Jared and I are going to carry on, and I'm going to read what I have left and fill in the blanks. The edits that I made are gone because technology can take it just like that, and we choose how we respond. So here we go. I had just said, for it is during times of crisis that the true ones reveal themselves, and that is what I aspire to be. I aspire to be true to myself and others as a result of the integrity I restore through right action. And having walked this path through life as a mystic without a monastery for most of my life, I have learned a few tricks, teachings, and tales that I believe could help you in dreaming the newly ordered world into existence with other progressive, optimistic warriors willing to take a stand for what is right. Now is our chance to take our power back and call the treasonous ones who have sold their soul for fame, fortune, and excess in this carnal reality that is short-lived compared to the everlasting bliss we can experience when we're willing to push through to the highest level of this reality, while we're able to play the character called us in the ultimate reality game called life. It's time to understand how intentionally moving our survival archetypes into their sacred aspects, out of their scared ones, will completely transform our reality and experience of the realistic evidence appearing legit in tomorrow's yesterday that reality really is. We are holy humans who begin our reality or our story as God sparks who forgot that we came here to remember that water in a glass from the ocean is still considered ocean water even if it is no longer directly in it. And once we learn how to detect lies based on the feelings we get from things, life will become much easier to maneuver because we can better discern what is ours, what is theirs, and what we're integrating in to make ours. Life is about the perpetual transmutation of energy. It's like a lamp that's always flowing to and through us through the expression of light and the experience of it through the currents running through us, for we are the batteries with the positive and negative charge in us at all times, and so it is us who must decide which wolf we will feed. Energy expresses itself differently when it expands or contracts, which is why the shift between the upward and downward spirals of emotion live between the state of contentment, where we are, regardless of the circumstances that surround where we are, and boredom, which takes us down into the depths of depression, where everything feels heavier and harder to move. Feelings get expressed into actions through the body temple, and it is for this reason we must honor the temple our soul worships in, and that is why having a special practice is so helpful, especially during charge times like the ones we're currently in. We become emotionally attached to the results, which is not just the result of an action, it's the result of all the ideas that went into creating beliefs about the behaviors that then created results. So we must actually break down the action plan into a state of being, a state of behaving, a state of feeling, and a state of thinking, which then helps us remember that we are not our behaviors, but our behaviors definitely influence our experience of life overall. We can't change our behavior without changing the underlying belief that has become part of a belief system or a framework of thinking, what is often referred to as a paradigm. And that's why we must make a paradigm shift about who we are and what we came here for. And we have to change why we want the change to happen in the first place. We have to understand we defend our limitations every time we justify why things haven't happened yet, because logic is based on the most familiar idea, and most suffer with the belief that we can change it by ourselves, or that we can't change it by ourselves. Life is about sharing resources and helping one another, keeping energy in circulation, and so we must learn a new way of being together that honors and respects one another more. It is time for us to begin walking the path of love as we walk each other home to our heart center, and the reason we choose to incarnate, or the reason we chose to incarnate at this particular time in history. Please understand that your soul knew what it was in store for, and it knew that it could handle it, or it would die trying, and that is the most that we can ask of anyone. Yet I dare to say we could have world peace by bringing it into our own hearts and collective consciousness together first. And so I am hereby officially asking you to be part of the inner peace movement, where we will create a special practice for the peaceful inner warrior within. 3.5 years ago, when I decided to devote myself to writing a book that ultimately rewrote me before the world got to see the final version, I had no idea what was in store For as I went through the spectrum experience of living at all floors of the high rise of emotional awareness to gain perspectives of life from all levels. It was intense and I almost didn't make it through, but the support of family and a few friends and my own self, I made it through and want to make sure that others do too. The journey inward is dark and lonely at times, but even still, you need not feel alone any longer because together we are stronger, and I call you to unite with fellow warriors. So, welcome. Please, come along. Laura J.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome.